live on your tablet, phone, and the KUTV app. This is 2 News Live.
Thanks for joining us here on 2 News Live. I'm Brian Schnee. Tuesday, June 18th, going in depth tonight on the latest of the planned execution of Taberon Honie. Before we dive in, though, have to make sure we let you know what's going on for the rest of the world here in the news with your headlines. A hazmat situation in South Salt Lake forced a few evacuations and road closures this afternoon. Unified Fire Authority crews say they were called just after noon for reports of an unknown chemical reaction which was producing some white smoke. The chemical was in a 55-gallon drum outside of a business building. A few businesses were evacuated. Crews say the chemical has been stabilized. An update on the Big Draw fire burning in Duchesne County. Right now, the fire has burned about 457 acres. After being mapped today, crews say cool weather should help firefighting efforts. The fire has not moved outside of its existing footprint. And the fire started yesterday afternoon. No containment information right now. Cause still under investigation. Also in your headlines, a new passport facility set to open in Salt Lake City. In a statement from Secretary of State Antony Blinken, he says the department is creating 6 new passport agencies, including one here in Salt Lake. The State Department reports 48% of Americans have a passport, and in 2023, over 24 million passports were issued. As we go in depth tonight, you can get in touch with us during the show. Use the hashtag 2NewsLive, or you can just weigh in on the conversation. We're streaming live, KUTV.com, the 2 News mobile app, and on YouTube. All right, let's go in depth here. In just a few weeks, Utah's first execution since 2010 could take place here. The state scheduled to execute Taberon Honie on August 8th by lethal injection. Amanda Gilbert joining us live here after talking to the Board of Pardons and Parole. Amanda, why might Honie's execution take place now after some deliberation?
Well, yeah, I'm in Murray right now. I'm right outside the Board of Pardons and Parole, Brian. I was at a press conference earlier today, and this is very rare for our state. Again, it's the first time in over a decade we could see someone on death row be executed, put to death via lethal injection. So take a look at your screen. We're going to show you Honie. We've been covering this closely. Now, we do know today that he has filed a petition for commutation. That basically is his last chance to avoid execution. The Board of Pardons is going to review that petition and then decide whether or not he will be able to get a commutation hearing. And in that hearing, we'd hear testimony from him and others, and then the board would decide whether or not to move forward with an execution. So we should be hearing about whether or not there'll be a commutation hearing in the coming weeks. But the Board of Pardons today did address that this is just something very rare for our state, something very new, something we haven't done in over a decade. They did say that Honie's petition for commutation was 50 pages long, and in that I kind of reviewed most of it, talked to a criminal defense attorney about that, but in it he talks about things like how he's expressed remorse for the murder he carried out from the start, how he's been well behaved in prison the past 25 years. He talked about his upbringing, his struggle with substance abuse. So we are working on getting that up on our news app for more information. But back to you, Brian.
Amanda, what else could stall this? I mean, there's appeals, that process, thinking about just how long this is all played out in general. Are there other pieces right now that could really slow this process back down again?
You know, that's a good question, Brian. I asked today if there's a chance where Honie could actually appeal to the governor, because that is a possibility in other states. But the Board of Pardons told me today that this is really his last chance. He submitted his petition for commutation. Now it is up to the board to decide whether or not there'll be a commutation hearing. If there is, the board could decide to not execute. If there is not a commutation hearing, the execution will move forward. And one last thing I want to say, if the board decides to not execute after that hearing, then he will simply serve life in prison instead. Back to you.
All right, Amanda, a lot to stay on top of here with the latest, not something that we see every day in terms of a planned execution. Read all of our past coverage on our website right now, KUTV.com. Following some breaking news now out of South Salt Lake where several people were stabbed. This was at the Central Point track station. Paul Nelson live on the scene right now. Paul, we're starting to get some information about potential victims and what took place here. What did you find out?
Well, luckily, first things first, we did hear that there were 3 victims that were stabbed here on this platform on 2100 South. Now, luckily, none of them have life-threatening injuries. We were told that basically one of them is in alpha condition, the other 2 in Bravo. So basically, it sounds like they're going to recover just fine. But what we do know, at about 4:20, a little bit after 4 o'clock this afternoon, there was some sort of a fight that broke out on this platform. Now, this right here is the Central Point platform at 2100 South, about 200 West. Some sort of fight happened here, and then as that happened, 3 of those 3 victims were stabbed. Now, we did have a UTA police officer that was actually here at the time and witnessed some sort of fight, but by the time he got to where these victims were, they had already been stabbed, so he was helping care for them. And then the suspect actually got onto the tracks train and headed south. Police called for backup, and at the Mill Creek station further south than here, an officer was able to spot the suspect, and essentially he was arrested without any kind of incident. So overall, it does appear that the victims are going to be okay. The suspect is in custody. As for what this fight was about, we're still trying to find out some details about that. But overall, the details are that the suspect is in custody. He's a juvenile, and the victims, 2 of them were juvenile, 1 of them was an adult, but they are expected to be just fine. Reporting live, back to you.
Paul, before you go, any other delays as a result of what took place? As someone who took the tracks to work today, there was a bus bridge in place for construction. Anything else that commuters need to be worried about as pertains to this incident?
It appears no, and the reason why is because most of the police activity, I mean, you can still see some police officers that are still on the scene, but as far as the operation of the actual station itself, trains have been kind of running back and forth ever since we arrived. So it appears that the tracks is running through this station for right now. No need for bus bridges or anything like that. So anybody who needs to use it, it looks like they'll go ahead and be able to use it without any real incidents.
Paul Nelson with the latest here on 2 News Live following that breaking news. Paul, thank you very much. As you see in Paul's shot here in South Salt Lake, Trent Parker, beautiful afternoon, no complaints. What are you seeing here as we track the weather throughout the evening?
Yeah, I have absolutely no complaints about this weather. What I did have complaints about was the weather we saw before this huge cool down that we saw yesterday, and we have those lingering effects into today as well. So those lows this morning got down into the mid 40s, way colder than we should be for this time of year, but it was very nice to open up those windows and let all that cool fresh air in. 32 in Heber, so right near freezing. 29 in Evanston, 31 in Logan, 23 in Ely. Definitely a lot of places getting down near or below that freezing mark, including Rock Springs at 34. 41 in Cedar City this morning, and we got down into the mid-60s in St. George. And tonight, we're pretty much doing it all over again, except for we're going to bump those temperatures up here in the northern half of the state just by a couple of degrees, so much so that we're not going to be worrying too much about the freeze here across the Wasatch Back or the south portions of southwest Wyoming. Evanston 35, 32 in Ely, so definitely some cooler air just off to our west, where we do have a frost advisory for portions of northeastern Nevada. That's for tonight, with those temperatures dropping near freezing, so you might see a little bit of frost on your car windshield by to the 80s for most of us. 78 in Ely, 83 across Delta, Nephi, Price at 85, 87 tomorrow in Richfield, and we'll be back into the mid to upper 90s down towards St. George. And here in northern Utah, we're working on that climb back towards normal temperatures for tomorrow, and then we're going to be well above that for Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and close to a record on Sunday. That's what we're forecasting. At least 100 degrees is what the forecast high for the day is, and our record was set back in 2012. That record is 101 degrees. Radar is pretty clear and quiet here across the Beehive State, but off to our east, there's the cold front that raced through yesterday here across the Beehive State, and now it's creating some severe weather issues out towards the Central Plains. But all eyes in the country right now are on the Gulf of Mexico, where we've got this spinning area of low pressure, and it might develop into a tropical cyclone or a tropical depression here over the next 12 to 24 hours. So here it is. They're labeling it as potential tropical cyclone 1. and it's going to head west over the next 12 to 24 hours, and it's going to impact mainly the eastern coastline of Mexico. But really, the strongest winds and the heaviest rain will be on the north side of the storm system. So likely the major impacts here will be towards the south coast of Texas over the next 12 to 24 hours. So here it is, bringing that moisture in on the north side of the storm system as we head towards tomorrow. There's the impacts for Texas, actually multiple days of steady rainfall for them. But it even encroaches on Utah, or at least the moisture does, right? This ridge or this axis of moisture starts to put in some chances for precipitation here across the southwestern United States. And our future track shows a better chance for precipitation as we head towards Thursday afternoon and evening, especially across the Four Corners area, mainly the eastern half of Utah. And it's not only Thursday afternoon and evening. It looks like this moisture is going to linger here into Friday as well. So likely seeing a better chance not only Friday morning, but Friday afternoon and evening here across the eastern half of the state. Most of the rain likely staying east of I-15. The mountains do a pretty good job of blocking that moisture from getting out towards the West Desert. But we do have that marginal risk for some excessive rainfall across much of eastern Utah, not only Thursday, but that coverage area kind of expands on Friday as well. Future rainfall amounts aren't all that impressive. We could maybe see an isolated spot or two where we see maybe a half an inch to a full inch of rainfall, but I think most places will see about a 1/10 to 2/10 of an inch. But you might want to save your slot canyon adventuring and your canyoneering towards the end of the weekend, because we do have that risk of flash flooding. It's going to be possible on Thursday towards the eastern half of the state. So Arches, Canyonlands, Grand Staircase down towards the south central part of Utah as well. And in St. George, you also have a slight chance of some rain, mainly just some thunderstorms in your area, especially off to the east on Friday. And then we're back into the triple digits Saturday, Sunday, and even really hot as we head towards the early and middle part of next week, up closer to 107. Maybe 108 in St. George, and we haven't quite gotten there quite yet this year, but we sure do have that in the forecast. 82 in Salt Lake City for tomorrow, 92 for the first day of summer. Breezy and a little bit showery on Friday with those thunderstorms up towards the mountains, and maybe one or two will roll off here towards the valleys. 100 degrees here in Salt Lake on Sunday, and then we're sticking around in the upper 90s towards Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday of next week as well.
All right, we're living it, that roller coaster once again here, Trent. Back to those triple digits in the forecast. Thank you very much. Remember to download our 2 News weather app to know about the changes in your neighborhood. You can get the forecast, live radar right on your phone. The app is free to download. Thanks for joining us here on 2 News Live. We are back tomorrow with another installment, perhaps stronger vocal cords, we shall see, for a Wednesday edition of the show. Have a great night. If you missed anything from any of the show, you can find it on our YouTube channel. Click the Live tab, and you can find all of 2 News Live and all of its glory in that section. See ya.